Prana chai is Australia's most loved sticky chai and now enjoyed all around the world in artisan cafes and homes from the UK, USA, Korea and Japan, and of course all around Australia where it has been handmade with love right from the beginning. Prana chai is made with all natural ingredients, no artificial sweeteners, preservatives or additives. It's only the good stuff. Prana is a Sanskrit word that translates to life force, and each day they aim to put this into their daily chai production. Thank you to Prana Chai for being our podcast brand partner on Things You Can't Unhear. Well, hello everyone. I'm Maritza Barone and welcome to my podcast, Things You Can't Unhear. In today's episode, I'm going to introduce you to Rochelle Courtenay. She's the founder and managing director of Share the Dignity, which is an Australian women's charity bringing dignity to homeless, at-risk and women experiencing domestic violence through distribution of sanitary items.
Hi, I'm otherwise known as the Pad Lady, which is a crazy title.
You are. And there's no doubt the Pad Lady is an incredible woman doing wonderful things for mankind. And I actually remember when we met earlier this year, you were rocking an infamous swim bikini and part of a promotional campaign spreading positive body image. So it's not only the good thing that you do for Share the Dignity, but you do it ongoingly around the community.
Oh, that was really taking one for the team that day. I had just had a hysterectomy. I felt like I was never meant to be in a bikini. I think it was the first time I'd ever put a bikini on in my life. But there isn't pretty much anything I wouldn't do for our sisters who just don't have access to the very basic essentials.
Yep, and that is incredible. And that was a very brave thing to do. I recently was asked to do a lingerie catwalk for a friend of mine, and in the same sort of manner of sharing positive body image, and I was petrified. So I can relate completely with how you dealt with that on the day. It was not enjoyable in the beginning, but I think once you start, it was incredible. You felt great afterwards,
yeah, but
right?
You know what I also did was thought, my worst day is somebody's best day. Suck it up, princess.
Exactly right.
Really? It was what I had to do at the end of all that, after I'd had my panic attack, right? Because I thought I was going down to put a full piece pair of togs on, which I'm more than comfortable in, but to split that thing and show that white neon belly that had just had a hysterectomy, I was like, oh my God. But anyway.
You did well, and
done.
You spread that positive body image message loud and clear. I want you to tell us about Share the Dignity, the charity that you created, and let's get into depth on how you've grown this charity over the last 3 to 4 years. How did your quest begin?
I was sitting on my veranda in Sandgate, a suburb I've lived my whole life, minding my own business, and I read an article that was written by Mamma Mia that talked about how many women were experiencing homelessness, and then how they were having to deal with their period, and that was with using socks and newspaper and wadded up toilet paper. And it covers me in goosebumps to this day because I cannot believe that this problem exists in this lucky country. You could imagine that this would exist in Kenya or Uganda or, really, but just not in this country, what we call the lucky country. I just couldn't believe it. And now I know the problem's so much greater than I ever imagined. So look, all I did was I had suffered severely from endometriosis my whole life. So having a period for me was an absolute nightmare, but I'd never thought about having a period but not having access to sanitary items. I mean, I just couldn't even imagine.
You can think of that moment when you've actually just run out of tampons and pads and you're out and about and you're just like, oh, okay, what am I going to do now? So that's just
that anxiety, right?
Exactly.
That anxiety is horrible. Like I know that, I would have had 744 period accidents in my lifetime because of how heavily
all of us are the same.
And that anxiety was horrible. So could you imagine tipping that anxiety on the fact that you don't know where you're going to sleep tonight? You don't know how you're going to feed your family. You don't know how you're going to put fuel in your car. Like all of those things must be just overwhelming for women in Australia.
Absolutely.
So I started collecting pads and tampons, and I back then I had my own personal training business. So I had women come to me from 5:30 in the morning every half an hour until midday, and I told them if they had a wine in 2015, that month, they were to bring me a packet of pads and tampons.
Yep.
And I did exceptionally well. So we ended up collecting 450 packets of pads and tampons in that very first, I didn't even call it a drive. It was just like, let's share the dignity. My daughter made up some posters. We set up a Facebook page. People bought them, dropped them on my veranda or into our local counsellor's office.
And what year was this?
This was in March 2015.
Amazing. So not that long ago.
No, it was only 4 years ago. But, oh my God, on one hand, it feels like it was yesterday. And on the other hand, it feels like it was 20 years ago because, oh my God, the stuff that has happened in the last 4 years has been incredible. So
from that first drive, you collected over 400 pads and tampons. And then what happened?
Yeah. So then we gave them out to 5 different charities in the local area, and that was good. And I never really gave it too much thought until a friend had got back in contact with me and said, hey, look, can you help in the domestic violence shelter wants some more pads and tampons? And I'm like, yeah, no worries. I'll just do a little call out on our Facebook page, keeping it local. Never really, I don't give things a lot of thought. I'm not that person. I don't have any risk. I don't think about those sort of things. So put it out on the Facebook page, and this is where it went viral. And I still don't believe that there is a woman in Australia or anywhere in the world really who wouldn't be empathetic to a woman having to go without the very basic of essentials or use socks or a tampon for days because they can't afford it. So I knew that right from the beginning. So I knew that all we needed to do was make sure every woman in Australia knew about it, right? How I was going to do it, I had no idea. So I'd done that Facebook call out. At that stage, there was just me and some, local people who were helping, and then it went viral. So then I started to hear from women in Darwin, and one woman who told me this story who said, there was an Indigenous lady who'd come into our petrol station, and she knew that she was homeless, and she'd taken a packet of pads off the counter, went into the bathroom, cleaned herself up, bled across the floor, so came back, put the rest of the packet back on the shelf and left. And she said, I couldn't charge her with stealing.
No.
What would be less dignified, stealing them or dealing? What I couldn't believe also from that story is why did she just not take the rest of the packet? Do you know what I mean? Like why, when you're in that situation, and you will find the more homeless people who are experiencing homelessness and poverty, and they're so kind.
Exactly.
They don't take that, I can't have that. I can't have that. Somebody else might need it. I just found that extraordinary. And so whilst I couldn't unhear that, so I couldn't not do it all over Australia. How was I going to do it? I had no idea, to be honest, but I didn't think about it. I just took one day at a time, and I surrounded myself with amazing women who were like, Rebecca in Melbourne, I want to help. How do I help? Put a box on your veranda. I remember Joanne in Sydney, who was one of our very first, our volunteers are called Shiros, and we now have 4,600 of these incredible women around Australia. But back then we had one, me, then another one, then another one, and everybody worked so hard to make it is what it is today. So I remember Joanne saying, right, well, we'll just put it all on a spreadsheet. I'm like, go for it, Joanne. Awesome. And that's really how it started. And now we've collected 2 million packets of pads and tampons to distribute to women who are experiencing homelessness and poverty. It's the poverty that's been the biggest eye-opener for me. So when we first started, I thought, 46,000 women who are experiencing homelessness, we can help them if we got 50,000 packets donated. But then I'm like, 50,000 packets is really only enough to help 10,000 women for 5 months. Really, if you think about it.
It's an ongoing problem, right? It's not going to stop anytime soon.
We're not giving her a warm jacket and it's keeping her warm for years, or shoes to keep her feet clean and off the streets. Do you know what I mean? So 173,000 women turned to homelessness services last year.
I want to talk in depth about women in homelessness in a minute, but I just want to see now where you're at with Share the Dignity and how you grew so quickly over the 3 years. I mean, it's just been almost like what you've just said is an organic rollover, person by person by person, and you've tugged at the heartstrings of so many people, and they've just managed to follow your lead.
Yeah, and I think it's because I go back to there isn't a woman in Australia who wouldn't be empathetic to that. But yesterday, a woman came into our office, one of our sheroes, and she said, "Can I give you a hug?" I said, "Sure, Kat, I'll have a hug from you, but tell me why." Anyway, and she said, a woman just came into school. She'd been seeing me in my shero shirt for a little while and came and said, "Can I give you a hug? Can you please give it to Rochelle?" I'd fled domestic violence and I received one of your Christmas gifts, or it's in the bag, which we'll talk about in a second. Both my daughter and myself did, and we had nothing. We had no tampons, we had no shampoo, because we hadn't brushed our teeth for ages, and we had no family and friends. We'd been relocated to a different state, and we got to a refuge, and there was this gift for us. And she was still holding her bag, Kat said. And she said, "Every time I think things are really tough," she said, "I touch my bag and I know that there's hope and that there's people that care about me." Oh my God, I was crying.
Wow.
I could not stop crying. And I just did a Facebook post to our sheroes. So we work in a group called Workplace, which Facebook, it's an intranet. And so I did a post this morning and I felt really guilty that Kat had given me that hug, because that hug doesn't belong to me. It belongs to everyone who donated a bag and every one of our sheroes who make this stuff happen.
Yeah.
It just happens because women so selflessly give themselves.
Absolutely. And you've just given them a platform to do it in, though. I think that's the big difference between you and someone else, is that you've actually created this platform and made it much easier for all of us to continue to donate and help towards this movement that you've created. I think it's really, really special. So I know you've got vending machines, you've got appeals, you've got collections. Tell me all about the things that you've made it so easy for us to help you with your movement.
Yeah, so we do what we call our Dignity Drive. So that's in twice a year. Our collection boxes go out, and this August you will find in March and August you will find collection boxes go out into all the Woolworths, into Brazilian Beauties, into Fernwood Fitness, into chemists all over Australia. So there's over 2,500 collection points. Remember, 4 years ago there was one on my veranda, which is incredible. But they're our Dignity Drives. They happen twice a year. Then we do It's in the Bag Christmas Appeal, which is the last 2 weeks of November, where Australians give a pre-loved handbag, fill it with life's necessities like shampoo, conditioner, toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, soap, sanitary items. They're the very basics that I believe every woman should have access to, but clearly don't. And then you can put in there whatever else you like. So some of the women talk about getting a perfume and smelling like they've never felt like a woman for many, many years, or actually even just getting a bag and a gift, you know, where they would never normally have got a gift. So that's a really easy way for Australians for me, and that started from me cleaning out my bathroom cupboard with I have too much. We all just have too much stuff, right? So if we can have too much stuff and actually give a gift to somebody who has nothing, and they really value that and they feel important and hope and all of those other things that we all deserve to feel every day of the year, but certainly at Christmas time, then that's really special to me. That's one of my favorite things.
Absolutely. Because you're making them feel seen, you're making them feel heard, you're making them feel valued. It's more than just a gift, right?
It's a hug. It's a hug in a handbag. You know, it's like, we've got your back, sister.
Exactly.
You know, we're here for you.
Yeah.
I wish we could give them all a home. I wish we could take away all their pain, but we can't. I just know that we can't. I can't even imagine to try to make a world where everybody had somewhere safe to call home. That would be my biggest dream in my lifetime. But I know that that's probably never going to happen.
And there are charities out there that are focusing on that. And I love that you're focusing on this element of help that is needed. And the other charities out there that are focusing on providing shelter.
We do what we do. And we came into it as a charity to do things that nobody else was doing. I don't see the point in setting up a charity where people are already doing it, because you just double all the expenses. It's not cheap to run a charity.
Yeah.
By the time you've paid your legal fees, you've got to set up a constitution, you've got to have a board of directors, you've got to have insurance, you've got to pay fees and permits in every state.
I wanted to ask you about this. So tell us about starting a charity. I mean, there's so many out there. How would people even go about starting it if they wanted to, or if they were like you and they found something that really tugged on their heartstrings and wanted to make a difference, what would you suggest that their first step would be? Would you suggest potentially searching if there were charities out there that were already doing it, and then teaming up with them?
Well, there's different kinds of people in the world, right? I didn't. I just went, oh my God, I can fix this. Surely we can fix this. I worried about the other side of things, very much secondary. But I did also surround myself. My husband is the most amazing human being. So he knew people who could do that sort of stuff. So we ended up with, he went to school with a friend who was at DLA Piper, who offered $30,000 worth of legal help, who did all of our constitution, it's not cheap. It's so not cheap. So if we didn't get that donated, could we possibly even be where we are now? I don't think so. Do you know what I mean? So it's about connections. It's about people, and it's about, not every charity will resonate with everybody. Do you know what I mean? I don't think this resonates a lot with a lot of men, because it's very hard to be empathetic to what it would be like to be without your period.
But it does resonate with 50% of the population. So it's awesome. More than 50%.
That's right. And so I spoke to them. When I talk in anything, I am talking to them. But now I've come to realize that it's not a female's issue. It's society's issue. If you don't get your period, you come from somebody who did. So it's time to wear the empathy on both lots of sexes. Do you know what I mean? It's time. We can't solve this problem alone. And as more males have jumped on board in a corporate way, and sheroes, we now have sheroes and heroes. We have about 20 men who go, oh, we want to help as well, which is fabulous. But I would say lots of that fault lays in me, and me just speaking to women, because that's what I've always done. So setting up the charity from that perspective was surrounding myself with people who had skill sets that I didn't have. So in order to have a charity, you have to have legal advice. You have to have accountancy. You have to have somebody who knows how to do fundraising. You need to, and fundraising and the licenses and all of that legalities that goes with that. So it was really, one of the first ladies to come on our board was Danny Barrington, who had a PhD in world menstrual health. She met me for a coffee. By the time she'd finished her coffee, she was already on our board. I was like, how many people do you ever find with a PhD in menstrual hygiene? It's amazing.
It's like this was really your purpose, and you've been led to do this because it's just unfolded so easily and so beautifully and so organically, like I said before. Look, there's many of us who I see you as part of the solution. Like, you got up and you did something about a problem you saw in the world, and it's a big problem. And from this, you've changed just so many lives. You didn't just worry about it or think about it. It triggered you, and you got up and did something about it. And this behavior, this action is something that I want to spark in our listeners today. I call this things you can't unhear, because people will hear this and they can't unhear it. Just like you read that article and you couldn't unsee it, you couldn't unread it. We all feel pain, we all feel discomfort, we all feel uneasy. But what's the tipping point between feeling the pain that you read about and that we hear about and see to actually doing something about it?
I think that the standard that you walk past is the standard that you accept. The fact that I had two daughters and I didn't want them, that when I read that article, that was not the first article that had ever been written about it. And I'm like, how do you just, I don't know. Obviously it was a lot of different things. It was obviously that I'd suffered severely from endometriosis. If I probably hadn't, I probably wouldn't be this person. Do you know what I mean? If I didn't have daughters, I didn't want my daughters ever reading that same article written by another journalist in another 10 years and thinking, oh my God, that's disgusting. Why hasn't somebody done something about that? It was just, I don't know. I don't put any hero cape on. I just did what I did because I thought that I could do something. And then it just skyrocketed. There wasn't a day that, that has gone by in the last 4 years that I'm not just surrounded by these amazing people who want to make a difference. And so they all play a role in how far we have got to where we are. Surrounding yourself with women are freaking amazing when they work together.
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah.
What keeps you motivated on this movement? Is it the people you're with, the stories you see, the people you help?
It's so many things. It's got so many things to it. And one of them is, obviously, I lead 4,600 volunteers. That makes my heart sing. I love that. people want to be kind, and that I have been able to be part of allowing them to make a difference in their own community. I love that bit of what we do. I think that's extraordinary. Then there's the women that we help, the girls that can go to school, the fact that I never wanted only for my girls to get an education and have a great life. I think every girl deserves to have an education and have a great life. And certainly not having access to sanitary items and missing days of school is not in that equation. That's one thing that completely riles me up. There is no way that any girl should ever miss out on an education because their family cannot afford sanitary items. So that's why our big push into getting our vending machines into schools, and we're working with UQ to measure that impact and what would that look like for the trajectory of the life of a girl that missed 2 days of school 4 times a year, even just to minimise that. You know, does she end up with a much less paying job? Does she end up with less superannuation? Does that continue this whole, you know, spectrum of poverty and, you know, homelessness? I don't know. I look at that and think that would be my best legacy that I could ever leave, is that more kids got to go to school and change the course of their life because they just had sanitary items. It's so simple. Because at the moment we all are working tirelessly to make sure that the collection boxes are set up in all of the Woolworths stores and all over Australia. And, you know, we're giving up our weekends to go in and pick them up and make sure they get sorted and get out to the 3,500 charities. I don't take that lightly. Time is the only thing that you can't purchase, right? So, and it is the most valuable possession. So I appreciate so much the time that our volunteers give us, because our charity wouldn't even be able to exist if they didn't give their time.
Giving back is so important. More solutions and less problems. How was building this foundation and this charity, how has it changed your life and your family's life and your girls' life and their perspective on the world?
It's changed my life. It's changed me personally. Like, I probably used to whinge about cleaning my house, or that I'd have to go and get groceries, or that I'd have to clean the kitchen. I don't whinge. I don't even think about those things anymore, because I'm so goddamn grateful that I have a house to clean, that I've got food I'm able to go out and buy food, right? And I'm able to feed my family and clean up after them. Not that they're not meant to clean up after themselves, right? But the whole point to that is that I'm so grateful. I'm just so grateful for what we have. I've met the most amazing people that I would never have ever met if this had never come about. I have, you know, extraordinary friendships from the Shiros and the people that I've met, and women that we've helped. You know, like I came in contact with a young girl called Rachel, that you may have seen a video shared on our page. Now, Rachel was experiencing homelessness, and her younger sister. So Rachel and her younger sister were 14 and 16. And I got a call from a local community person who said, look, these 2 young girls have been homeless and they have been just given a unit, but they have nothing. So my husband and I, my kids and local Shiros, all in one weekend fully fitted out her unit. She had everything in there, from a working brand new fridge and washing machine full of food from a local butcher's. It was just incredible. People are so bloody kind.
They are.
But to Rachel, I fell in love with her. I just love her. And I couldn't just have filled her unit. She now works with us. So she's now our junior admin assistant. And a new staff member started the other day, and she said, we went around the table and we talked about, you know, how long we'd worked there. And Rachel said, this is my family. This is what love feels like. And I was like, I was bawling my eyes out, so was everybody else. But it doesn't take much to be kind.
I love sharing these stories, because we hear so much negativity on the news and in our everyday lives, in the papers, and anywhere we turn, there's so much negativity. And if we can just hear these stories of how so many people out there are doing such incredible things to help other people, to be kind, to show gratitude, even in the worst of situations, these are the things we need to hear. And these are the things we need to hear more than anything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tell me about homelessness. You gave me a statistic before.
If you look at the stats that have come out from Homelessness Australia, 173,000 women turned to homelessness services last year. So at some stage throughout the year, they turned to homelessness services. Now, that doesn't include our drought-stricken farming communities. It doesn't include our remote Indigenous communities, and it certainly doesn't include those women who are living in their homes on the bones of their ass. They cannot afford to feed their kids 3 meals a day. They cannot afford to buy sanitary items. They certainly don't get Christmas presents. And so community centres and salvos and that, they're just pumped. They are so in need right now. And that's the difference between where I first thought our charity was going to be able to help with just helping people who are experiencing homelessness or fleeing to DV. The numbers are extraordinary of what is required out there. Like if I was to give you a breakdown of, we work with about 3,500 charities. Now they would say to us, oh, can we have 250,000 packets of pads and tampons and incontinence pads? But if we don't even collect 200,000, which is about the most we've ever collected at a collection drive, that's only enough for 50,000 women for 4 months. We don't ever really end period poverty. We just help it.
What have you found with speaking to these women and hearing statistics are the main causes of them being in homelessness situations?
In my opinion, it's all relative to domestic violence or family violence in some form or fashion. So domestic violence is the story that I hear over and over again, and that's from kids right through to older women, like the stories that I've heard about. I mean, Rachel and Violet are great examples. They fled their mother, who had a boyfriend after another boyfriend, who would, be abusive to the kids. And at this stage, Rachel got in a car, didn't even have a license, and her sister moved out and said, we won't be like that. We will not live like that. And instead lived in a car. But they tried to go to school, and the school knew that they were experiencing homelessness. What's happening in society, But then we have women who have fled domestic violence, and they're living in their cars in our neighbourhood. I can bet your bum that in your neighbourhood there is women living in their cars, too scared to ask for help because they think that their kids will get taken from them. And as mums do, they try and get them to school. They try to make sure that they have food. But, do they pay for sausages and bread, or do they buy sanitary items? Where every parent's going to buy food for their kids first.
There's different types of homelessness, which you've touched on. We do just think about someone being homeless as living in the street and just fending for themselves, or potentially having a mental health issue. But it's so much more than that, as you've just described. And it could be people who are living from couch to couch to couch to couch and just or living in their cars, as you said. Like, there's just so many variations of what homelessness
there is. And the highest growth in homelessness now is for women over the age of 40 who will couch surf and try to do whatever they can to have somewhere safe to sleep, which is just the saddest. I just can't even believe that happens in our society. No super, no one wants to hire them. And then it just, it's a chicken or the egg. Does the depression come before or after? The only thing that we can do now is to change and ensure that our girls don't end up in that situation, right? We have to try to make sure that our daughters learn financial responsibility and how does that look in a partnership and a marriage, and how do they ensure that they never get themselves into a situation like that? Yeah, so that we can make sure that when you're getting married and you're having kids and super's going into your husband's, and then 20 years later you break up and you're the one without any super, and you're the one that's out on the street. Like, how do we stop that? How do we ensure that our girls know that this is actually a reality, and that can happen to them if they are not taught how to be financially responsible for their 20-year-old self, for their 30-year-old self, but for their 50 and 70-year-old self as well.
So important. What help and support's out there for them? And most importantly, how do we get the message out there to them?
Well, there is no shelters for older women. There's not enough shelters for women with children fleeing domestic violence. So what do you think your likelihood of a 50-year-old woman fleeing domestic violence is? There's nowhere for her to stay. We're going to give that to a mum and kids first. And everyone might say rightly so, but everyone deserves to have somewhere safe.
Exactly.
So it's the government's responsibility. It's the government's responsibility to find solutions. It's our responsibility to find solutions. I've been banging on this for years, but there should be some sort of system like there's an adopt a granny. I was a single mum for 10 years. I would have loved to have rented my room to somebody who didn't have somewhere to live and who helped do homework with my kids in the afternoon or put a meal on a couple of afternoons a week, because I was always the last parent to turn up at after school care to pick up my kids, and then I'd hurry up and get them home and get them dinner in their face and, do all of that stuff. Surely we can be a society where we're all helping each other.
What a beautiful idea that is.
It would be a brilliant idea. There is a new business out there called Share Abode, and that is getting, whether it's two single mums together or two different families together to share a house, to split the bills and stuff like that. There is something out there a little bit like that she I have been helping her with. So there are, but that shouldn't be a people's thing. That should be something the government should be looking at, because the problem's only going to get worse.
So you've been talking to politicians and government bodies, haven't you, with this issue?
Absolutely. I spent most of last year talking to every politician that would listen to me about the tampon tax. And now the tampon tax is gone, which is great, but it's really time to focus on the whole thing about domestic violence, the fact that it's so hard to leave. Women are so financially dependent. You can't just get up and leave if you have nothing. And even worse, if you do have stuff, if you do have money, it's even worse because you're not actually even entitled to anything from the government, because you've already, you've got a home or you've got money in a bank account that's not actually, you can't access it because he's controlling that. It's so hard. There has to be a better way.
I totally agree with you. If there's people out there listening or within a corporation who might want to significantly help you with this, what's the best way for them to go about it? Because I know you've got these vending machines and they go into poverty-stricken schools and areas. What do they cost? How can corporations get involved? How can we help you?
Yeah, so our Dignity vending machines are probably the only thing that we as a charity need big money for. So every vending machine costs us $10,000, and we put them into domestic violence shelters, homelessness hubs, those community centres and poverty-stricken schools. So we installed one in a Cairns domestic violence health centre, and I was there on the Wednesday, and a woman came up to me and said, I came in here on Monday and she was still battered and bruised. She said, I came here battered and bruised. This is the fourth time I've fled domestic violence. I needed legal help. I was so embarrassed because every time I come in here, I can see them just roll their eyes at me and think, oh, you're only going to go back again. She said, but this time I know I'm not. Anyway, and she said, I needed help with legal help. I needed help with a house, somewhere to live. I needed money. I needed psych help for my 6-year-old daughter. I needed to get her into another school. We needed to flee. She said, and then I got my period. She said, and I just couldn't go and ask the ladies for more help because I just feel like I'm useless anyway. And she said, and then the vending machine was installed the next day. And she said, I wanted to have a party about tampons. It was so embarrassing, but that took away one less anxiety that I had. And that machine is just priceless, she said. And I was just, crying because you just don't hear how desperate these women are and how important just being able to deal with your period is.
How many vending machines have you got now?
So we have 150 vending machines already installed around Australia.
Amazing.
And we have a list of about 450 that we would like to install. And obviously, as money comes in, we then can order more and install more. So, every vending machine has either been sponsored by somebody or by an event that people have put together or a company that has donated, and they're all named after somebody that was really important to them. So, you too can leave a legacy as a business and say, you know what, I believe that that's worthy and we can help make a difference that way. So,
I have no doubt there's people listening who would be keen to help with that. Is the best way to get through to you guys through the website?
Yeah, just head to our website. And if you want to hold your own pad party or you want to hold your own It's in the Bag party or any of those sorts of things, then raising $10,000 is amazing. But joining us for Yoga for Dignity or joining us for Run for Dignity or coming to our high tea, it all raises awareness. As I said before, there isn't a woman in Australia who I don't think wouldn't be empathetic to another woman having to use socks on newspaper and undies. And my biggest goal is to get every woman in Australia to know about us. because you can't unhear it.
You can't unhear it. And that's why I got you on here, because I met you and you blew me away from the minute I met you. You are a phenomenal human. So are all of your volunteers and everyone who works with you. And you're a credit to society.
Oh, thank you. You're just saying that because you met me in a bikini, right?
No, and you rocked it. You rocked it. No, I am feeling quite emotional, to be honest, because hearing these stories is horrible to have to be in that position. And if we can do something about it, just like you've done, then the world will be a better place. So thank you again, Rochelle. Everyone, please be sure to share this episode with your friends, your colleagues, your neighbours, your kids, whoever is out there that would be interested in listening and being a part of this cause and this movement that Rochelle has started. Don't forget, everyone, please be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.